Assalamu alaikum rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Hope you're doing well. So, I came across this news story, and in New York City, there was a person who had chucked their mini poodle dog pretty far up, so off the balcony essentially. The poor little guy was really suffering. And this got me to thinking again of an idea I thought of in the past, is that we should require licenses in order to own a dog. And the reason I say this is because it's too easy to own a dog. And I recall when my grandma made me study about hamsters before I could actually own one, because she didn't want me owning something I didn't know how to take care of. And by studying first, you learn to appreciate the critter, and it shows that you actually want the animal. And if someone wants the animal, they're gonna work hard to get it. And if you're required to get a license in order to own an animal, you're less likely to harm that animal, and because you put hours and time into acquiring it, and you take it more seriously. Now, people can have a license and still harm the animal, and people could have no license and be kind to the animal. But I think America has to take a hard look and say, okay, they pushed fur babies for a while as a replacement for children. You'll see dog mom. You just see it a lot. America has a deep obsession with dogs outside of their function, more as ornamentation. So, outside of a dog that does herding, the dog that does hunting, security, the smaller dogs that don't even hunt rats, they're just kind of there. Those types that are just pets, they often don't really get the respect that is due, and there's not a lot of educational programs that teach people, what a dog is about, and their health issues that can rise up. And dog dumping is a big thing in America. People get a dog and then they dump it, and then the dog goes to the pound and the dog is put down. And even the rescues where they try to rehome some of these critters, they have behavior problems and get mauled. And you gotta be super careful when buying a shelter dog and a rescue dog, because you don't know what they're coming from. And sure, we can get into arguments about vetting and stuff like that, but regardless, it should be harder to own a dog. I'm not sure about cats, because I don't know much about them besides just the basics. But when it comes to dogs, my grandma used to do dog showing, and in the past I shared pictures of when I was a kid doing dog showing, like the American Kennel Club type of dog showing. And I'm really into dogs. I really think that they are remarkable creatures. And so I think that in order to reduce animal cruelty, I think it's time we start requiring licenses, and this will cut down on irresponsible owners, because if people know that they will get fined, and if they don't have the dog colored with this sort of verification badge, we should invent one. Then we know the owner should be fined, and there should be records. This will also create jobs. Owning a dog okay, so for example, to own a cow, in a lot of places, there's a lot of work put into it. How much water this guy's gonna need, it's a lot. And there's zoning laws. So when it comes to dogs, it's time that we require licensing, especially now that I would say people are more irresponsible with their animals. And if we don't want dogs mauling kids, biting people, getting dumped on the freeway, dumped in neighborhoods, becoming wild strays, stuff like that, we want to stop puppy mills, well, then you should require licensing. Americans kind of might see this as an infringement upon their liberties, but you can't own certain types of pets. So it's not too far off to say, hey, you need licensing to own something. I think this pushes accountability and responsibility on people. And I'd argue if you're not willing to get a license to own the dog, I don't think you really want it and you don't really deserve it, because you're not willing to put in that basic step. And I think that every animal should have a non-removable identification linked to the owner, and when the animal is sold, there should be a place where you go and report that this animal has now gone under the custody, basically under the authority of another person, and they must go fill out the forms. This way, if the dog is abandoned, that person can be fined, and to get serious about fines. And if we do this, I think we can cut back on a lot of animal cruelty cases. And I think a nation that values the well-being of the animals that live within it is one that has excelled in society. And animals, they matter, and will be held accountable to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for how we treated them. But that news story where you can see the officer is just really sad for the critter, and how animal cruelty cases are not really prosecuted enough, we can see we still have a lot of work to do. So I'm putting the idea out there, is that we should require licensing, and there should be training programs, what to expect with certain breeds. And if your dog, I don't believe in forced neutering or forced spaying, but if your dog has a litter, you need to report that so that those pups can be registered and then tagged and kept track of, so we know what happens to them. It's a good idea when you really look at it to cut down on dog attacks, dog dumping, and animal cruelty. It's time to modernize how we go about pet ownership. I read a lot about parrots. I watch parrot videos. I want to have a fish tank one day, and it's a great idea to study stuff before. But remember, some people don't have the initiative, and if they're so lazy to learn about the breed that they're gonna get, to learn about what warning signs are, and if they can't afford the medical bills that come along with the animal, well, then they don't need to have it. Having a dog is a privilege, not a right. And in the past, a dog could just be free, but if you live in an apartment, you don't need to have a dog. You don't have the space for it, the dog isn't going to get proper food and exercise, and a lot of dogs get diarrhea, and then their owners get super mad when there's crap on the floor, and then they beat the living hell out of the dog. It's just terrible. So people really shouldn't have a dog unless they can actually exercise it and have proper space for it. But you'd be surprised how selfish people are. And we have a responsibility to help reduce evil in the world, and animal cruelty is an evil. And I propose that dog licensing is one way to do that. Let me know what you think. And do you have a similar idea? Let me know.